All right, so as Steve said, I'm the chair for tourism, event, and sport management here on campus. I'm going to kind of tell you the story of just a class that I taught in the fall of 2019 and all of the different ways that students have been able to stay engaged over the years with the idea that came out of it to the point where it's now a business that is, as Steve said, has taught over 30,000 students in the high school space how to officiate. So that's kind of the topic for today. So the first thing, just kind of lay the groundwork on where did this idea ever come from in the first place. So I just happened to read a fairly random Indy Star article in the spring of 2019 as I was thinking about, okay, what project do we want our capstone class to do in the fall, and it was talking about the shortage of sports officials in Indiana. And so I did a little bit more research and I realized it wasn't just Indiana, it was a national shortage. And this was before COVID, so we're talking fall of 2019. And it was really across the board in all states, in all sports, to the point where I was reading articles that were saying, hey, if you think of Texas and high school sports, what do you think of? Football, Friday night lights, right? Like there is a shortage of sports officials in Texas so significant that it could not just be Friday night lights anymore. It's Wednesday night lights, it's Thursday night lights, it's Friday night lights because they didn't have enough officials all at one time to officiate games on Friday. So if there's a shortage in Indiana basketball and Texas football, I can guarantee you there's a lacrosse shortage in Nebraska, right? Does that make sense? So I just thought, okay, it's an interesting challenge space. So just a couple of stats to kind of frame the conversation. And these are some things that are updated even post-COVID to make it even worse. 50,000 officials quit officiating between 2019 and 2022, according to the National Federation of High Schools, which is literally 1,000 feet that direction on the canal. That's a 30% decline, went from 250,000 down to 200,000. And then 62%, according to a National Association of Sports Officials survey, plan to quit within the next 3 years. And then 80% of new officials quit within 3 years. So they start and then they realize it's difficult, challenging, they don't have the training, they're getting yelled at, they don't like it, whatever, and then they drop. So the new ones getting in the pipeline are not lasting very long. A few other statistics that we've been a part of doing some research with Officially Human, a nonprofit organization, the last few years. 50% of officials are at least 55 years old. So we've got half of officials are on the older side. The average age of officials is actually 57 years old. Another survey I found said 50% have less than 6 years left, and then only 12% of officials are less than 34. Right, so we have an aging population. We're not getting enough new people into the pipeline. So that is kind of the background on the national shortage of sports officials. So my capstone class uses the human-centered design process, also called design thinking. This kind of frames the 16 weeks of the class. We use if you just Google design thinking, you'll come up with a couple of different models. We use the 4-step double diamond approach, kind of divided into two parts of the class. One is understanding the problem, right? So being able to understand why the problem exists and what the actual problem is that needs to be solved. And then the second half of the class, which is developing creative or innovative solutions to that problem. So the first phase of the class is the discover phase. So that's where we're doing research. So we do observation. We did observations at youth and high school sporting events on how officials were treated. And then we interviewed 50 sports officials. Then students go through a process of framing the problem. I'll talk about what those problem spaces are in a second. Then we go through, and we actually did this today for our class this semester, we go through a structured ideation process to develop new and creative ideas, not just the low-hanging fruit ideas that students could have come to class with on day one. And then ultimately where we end is students pitching ideas to our partner or to an industry audience. So the problem spaces that we uncovered were actually there's more than just one problem, okay? So again, the problem isn't that there's a shortage of sports officials, it's the why and what's leading into that problem. So I know it's a little bit difficult to see here, but we kind of had, we ended up with like 6 buckets. One was education and training. And so when we get to that middle part of those diamonds, we have what's called a how might we question. So that's kind of your question that's like the inspirational question to kind of guide your creative thinking for the rest of the semester. So there we came up with how might we give rookie referees the practice they need to feel confident, right? So really what we were finding was happening, and as referees told their stories in the interviews that we did with them about how they got into officiating, it's with very limited training and very limited knowledge. And you're going out onto a court or a field with people expect, if you have the stripes on, that you know what you're doing. People go out there, they are not confident, or even if they have read the rule book and do pass a test, there's a big gap between passing the test and officiating a game, because it's happening live speed, in your face, and you got to make the call within a second, right? So they're not feeling confident. They're literally going out there never having done it, and everyone is yelling at them like they should know what they're doing, right? So how can we kind of shorten that learning curve and give referees a little bit better training before they step out on the court the first time? Number 2 was the assignment of games. We found all sorts of issues with assigners. Those are the people that actually put referees into their game, whether that's AAU games or high school games or whatever. It just simply put, if you can imagine what a good old boys network looks like, that's what the assignment of or the assigners are in that world. That's a whole other conversation and presentation we could have. Perception and empathy. One of the best how might we statements I've ever seen a student come up with was actually a men's basketball player here at IU PAWI at the time. He was quiet the whole semester, but all of a sudden he came up with what still stands as the best how might we statement ever. How might we change people's perception of the official from the villain to the hero, right? So when a lot of people show up at a sporting event and they see the person in the stripes, their assumption is that person is here to screw me over. They're the enemy, right? They're the villain. But how can we do anything to make people change the perception of that referee? Man, I'm glad that person is here so my kid can play a game today. Because if they're not there, they can't play, right? Then that is related to fan and sportsmanship behavior. We had an awareness and access, just how do we get people that would never have thought of being an official to at least try to learn something about being an official to see if they like it. And then we also had a space on community and mentorship for existing officials. So our key insight in the kind of the education space on this was that the existing so the number one way that sports officials learn how to officiate was by reading the rule book. So the rule book is a book literally published and printed by the National Federation of High Schools, and it is not the easiest thing to read. And young people, do you guys read all your textbooks? Like thinking that an 18-year-old is going to sit and read the rule book as the way that they're going to learn is highly unrealistic, right? So it's complicated language. I mean, it's written at a college level. It is not written in plain speak. And even if you're someone that like knows basketball, when you go to read the rule book for basketball, it's like, I don't even know what I'm reading right now. I probably should have had an example on there to kind of prove that point, but it's not easily accessible by lots of people. So that was the number one way that in research that we were finding that referees learned was by the rule book. And then number 2, there was some other kind of training-ish materials out there, maybe some YouTube videos and YouTube channels. The National Federation has an NFHS Learn platform, which had some content, but either there's no video to go with it, or the video that existed is like the video on the right? And that is what I would call the sideline high angle, right? It's the coach's cam, it's the TV network feed, but if you learn officiating content from that angle, that's a lot different than the left, which is how an official actually officiates the game, which is the point of view. Right? So our seed of our idea was essentially how do we train and educate officials using like the point of view as the basis of the training rather than the sideline high angle. So the semester ends, students pitch ideas around those 6 problem spaces. I was really excited about this point of view video, but it's like, what do you do about it, right? So probably nothing. So I have a class every semester. I got to find the next project. You're always on this hamster wheel of the next partner, the next project. More than likely, I'm not going to do anything with it. But I was kind of excited about it, and I got invited to speak at Indiana Sports Corporation hosted event on the Sunday before COVID happened on Wednesday, and they shut down the men's basketball tournament. It was the women's championship. So it was like 6 p.m. on a Sunday. They were still playing. COVID, like no one thought everything was going to shut down like 3 days later. And I was on a panel talking about the shortage of sports officials. And there were 2 people in the room that made a difference in this idea going forward, which was Kyle Armstrong and Mark Baltz. They already had a sports officiating technology concept in the marketplace that they'd been working on for 7 or 8 years. Had nothing to do with education and training. It was kind of like a huddle for sports officials where you could kind of break down your own game tape and get feedback from other people on calls and stuff like that. And they were like, they followed up with them on a call the next week, and they're like, we've been hearing people talk about the shortage of sports officials for 20 years now, but we've never heard anybody talk about it the way that you're talking about it. So that led to a next meeting, and ultimately, I took this idea that we had of the interactive, immersive point of view technology, and I had asked a capstone class over in the Luddy School of Engineering. There's a professor over there, Zeb Wood. He's still there. He has a capstone class. They need projects to work on. So I just said, hey, Zeb, can we come up with just a prototype of one play that your student group can work on over the semester and show what this would look like? And so they did that. There was a student out of that semester, Robert Burita, and he was super pumped about this. It was also May of 2020 when he was done. There's nothing happening in sport. There's no jobs out there. So this kid was perfectly happy to kind of stay on and keep working on this over the summer. Kyle and Mark paid us like a $7,500 grant to be able to pay Robert to develop the first prototype for RefRep. So he went into, does anybody, we got any Madden players in here? So a lot of those Xbox games are made, like in the very first graphic screen, you'll see it says Unity or designed in Unity. It's like a little graphic on the bottom of the screen. So he went into Unity and he turned this idea into like a video game type design. So essentially the idea was we took an Xbox Kinect, which is the device that you see on the left, and then people would watch a play. Well, here he is designing. This is like screenshots from our meetings and stuff as he's designing the call. But ultimately, it looks like this, where you can stand in front of your TV, you can see the play develop from the referee's point of view, and then your hand signals make the call. So the Xbox Kinect can monitor what motions you're making, right? And then it can say, yes, you're making the wrong call. No, you're not making the right call. Does that make sense? So here's, people that were, example of a screen. This is one of our earliest ones. There's a basketball game on the left, and then the screen stops, and then you're making the call, and it tells you if you get it right or if you get it wrong. So that then by the fall so that was in the summer that he was developing that game in Unity, and we had a functioning prototype. We actually sold 25 of those units in a box. Do I have that? No, I don't have that in there. But we had it in a box. We packaged it up, and at that point we were selling that unit to where it was mostly to like college campus recreation departments, because that's kind of who they were selling to before in their old business. So that's the contacts and sales funnel that they had. So 25 of those actually get sold. So that's if you're developing innovative, like there is something to like the first time someone buys something and spends money and you get paid for it, like that is a benchmark moment in the development of the concept or their idea. But if you study anything about entrepreneurship and innovation, usually really successful businesses, like where they actually make their money is not the thing that they started out doing, right? And that's going to be the case as I go through the rest of this presentation. I was able to include some student research on this. So I had my graduate assistant at the time needed to do a thesis to graduate with our master's degree when we had it at that point. So he essentially did a pre-test, post-test, experimental control group design on officiating, confidence and knowledge. So we had programs using the Xbox, we had programs not using it, and then he published a paper here, Impact of Traditional versus Interactive Point of View Video Based Training Simulations, blah, 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 right? So we got it published, right? So it's out there. The research, confirmed that the people that used the interactive and immersive point of view video were performing better on a knowledge test, and then also feeling more confident about their calls. So does anybody in here officiate? Do we have any refs in here? Nobody? Yeah. So there's two parts to being a good official. You got to get the call right, but you got to be confident in doing it because it's also a sales job. And if you look not confident making it the call, people are going to yell at you like you didn't make the right call, even if you made the right call, right? So it's part science and part art. So anyway, we get that study published, but we'd sold 25, and it was like, well, the problem at this point was it's not scalable because we're using an Xbox Kinect. Microsoft does not make Kinects anymore. We were literally, every time there was a sale, we were running to the GameStop in Brownsburg or Plainfield or Broad Ripple or wherever to go buy used Xbox Kinects so that we could brand it and ship it out. Like that's not, and at one point we were talking to literally there was a guy named Igor in the Romanian mob that we were talking to who could get us like black market versions of the Xbox Kinect that were like the pirated versions that didn't have the license, but it was still function. And we were like, all right, this is not, we need to do something different. Like Igor is not our path to success here. And got really lucky just putting stuff out. So here's your lesson, whatever you're doing and working on, just be pushing it out on social media because we're putting stuff out on LinkedIn about what we're doing. I'm pushing stuff out. And then in early or mid 2021, just a random basketball official sees this stuff and he's like, man, I really like what you guys are working on. Daniel Drake is his name, and he's a Division I women's college basketball official, gotten to a fairly high level, up to the SEC, but he was also a developer. So he has the technical skills to do something beyond the Xbox Kinect. He had gone to an Apple development conference, and Apple in 2021 released Apple Vision, which was essentially the same technology that Kinect had, we could do within the iPhone or the iPad. So instead of having that external device, now you can just flip your iPad up and make the calls in the same way. So what Daniel did then over the course of a year is he went and made it into an app. So you can kind of see what some of those screenshots look like when it was in the phone version. So he made the Apple product first. Android does not have the same vision motion tracking technology, but instead we had to create it in what was called tap mode, where you would pick the answer on the screen rather than making the signal. But then it was at least cross-platform. And then so just to get a sense of the stuff, I'm not going to play the whole video, but just to get a sense of the stuff of how we put the content together. So this is just clicking through it, and there'll be sound in a second. Yeah. So they see the play. So one out, runner on third. All right, and then you're making the call. And then we have an analysis piece.
With a runner on third base only, the base umpire has to be prepared for the catcher to throw back to third base and attempt to pick off the runner. While this play won't always require a lot of movement, the base umpire needs to ensure that they can get into a position to see the tag and the runner's touch of the base. Let's take a look at this play. In the C position, the base umpire is located between second and third base. Here, the base umpire is shading a little towards third base in anticipation of a potential throwback into third base.
Right, so you can see in that video we had like a drone view, we had a sideline view, we had the ref. We started early on with the goggles, not the goggles, but the, what were they, sure? they were glasses. We had like the glasses that had the video camera right here. The quality on those wasn't very good, so we ended up with the GoPro, and the GoPro, the stabilization was better, the 4K video quality was better, so that was kind of the ticket there. And then we had to kind of produce it on the back end. You had like the illustration and the telestration going on. We had someone talking on a green screen with the teaching points. You put it all together, and that play then is explained in about a 2-minute and 30-second clip. So we had more people buying that. We had maybe 500 subscribers to that content, but it was not going to scale fast enough for anybody to be making their investment money back, and businesses cost money to operate, and so you got to monetize it quick enough before everybody runs out of money. April of 2022 is important. There was this really cool article that came out in Experience magazine that got a lot of good publicity and play for us, and it was kind of talking about our app-based platform. But on spring break of that week, so exactly 3 years ago to the week here, we made a decision to pivot to a completely different model, which was difficult to do because everybody had put a lot of effort into the app and everyone was proud of it, loved what it was, but like we were not getting enough people buying it. So the strategic pivot at that point was when we realized that our focus to this point was that we were serving the existing officiating market, right? We were trying to reach people that had already started to officiate and then help train or educate them to take them to another level. All right, but the real problem that needed to be addressed was developing a systemic approach to introducing young people to sports officiating. So we kind of pivoted from the existing market to creating new officials, right? So we're talking about putting new people, and if we were talking about like how are we actually going to solve the problem, we actually need more new officials, right? So it was that was the pivot at that point. And so we had some insights and we had some different conversations going on, but realizing that students take classes every day across the country. States put a high value on things that can be aligned with workforce development. So this is something where you can get a credential and then immediately go and get paid, and you're also learning all these transferable skills like conflict resolution, making quick decisions. I think it's a sales job. I teach a sales class. I think it's just as much sales as anything else. It's communication. Making decisions under pressure. There's all these things that you can use in every other part of your life. And I was convinced of that because Dr. Sherman will remember this, I got kind of literally thrown into a senior level class that I was going to teach when I was getting my master's degree at IU Bloomington. Like the person that taught the class, literally the semester I was in it in the spring, quit, and they put me in this class in the fall. I would have been eaten alive in that environment if I had not been a sports official for 4 years before that. Right? So the ability to walk up on a stage like this and be in charge and be in control, even though I actually did not know what I was doing trying to teach a 400 level sport finance class as a master's student, when I knew 22 of the 44 people in the room because like they're my age, and I'd just been in classes and worked with them all in different places on campus, right? I would have been eaten alive if I had not had that ability to stand up in front of 44 people and look like I was in charge of what was going on, right? And then that's what I've done for the rest of my career. So I credit that to the transferable skills learned in sports officiating. So the question we came up with here then is, what if we taught students sports officiating during the school day and they immediately applied those skills after school? And then that's really the direction that we've gone for the last 3 years. To the point where now 30,000 students have done that. So we then had to create something new. So the app product wasn't going to work. That wasn't the right technological solution. So we essentially had to create our own learning management system. So if you think of Canvas, right? Canvas it's an LMS. It's a learning management system. We had to custom create one that would kind of fit the nature of how we wanted to do our content. We've now got 18 sports available. There's 3 more sports in the pipeline. So we've got field hockey, water polo, girls lacrosse, basketball, football, baseball. I think we're adding gymnastics, and there's some other courses in the development pipeline. We've got someone that is the voice of all of those that runs through. I'll show you how they're set up on the back end here in a second. We put a lot of effort into the instructor portal. So one of the things you run into is we've got people teaching these classes that are not sports officials. They're math teachers, they're resource teachers, they're PE teachers. We have our content being put into PE classes. We have standalone classes. We have there's 100% asynchronous online classes that high schools are offering for students to go through this. There's every possible which way that you could think a class and this content could get delivered, it's getting delivered. But for the people that are teaching it hands-on, we've tried to create as many resources for them to be able to teach this class with fidelity, even though they don't necessarily have a background in sports officiating. One of the things that we were able to get 2 years ago from the NFHS was essentially their stamp of approval to be the official officiating education partner of the NFHS, which allows us to integrate their rule books into our platform, to distribute the rule books as part of the course fee for students, paying the school is paying a seat license for the student to be in there, but in that, then they get the NFHS rule book and don't have to buy it as a textbook, right? So that's all bundled and wrapped into the experience. And then we have state partnerships, which is great because essentially that becomes our sales and marketing arm. So the NFHS says we approve of you as our official education platform. And then they communicate that out to the 50 states. The 50 states push that out to all of their schools. So our lead generation from a marketing perspective really comes through that process. We do have 4 salespeople. 3 of them have taken my sales class and were our top salespeople. So I'm able to pluck the top salespeople right out of the sales class and put them in there. They're all doing very well. Their job really becomes once a school says they're interested and they fill out a form somewhere or they've been on a webinar, their job is to follow up, do a demo, close the sale, right? But we've also got in those agreements, there's a lot of social media that this is the Georgia High School Athletic Association, so there's a certain number of posts that they've all agreed to push out on social media, which also creates awareness, and that's free for us. So we've spent almost nothing on actual marketing. We've baked it all into this NFHS process of communicating these relationships outward. Let's see here. So then what does the platform look like? So we've got all of the courses that have been developed. You click on, the course. So schools do it all kinds of different ways. Some of them, everybody does basketball. Some of them, hey, you can pick the sport. We've got 18. You go through at your own pace with the sport that you want. Again, a lot of different ways to do it. The first thing they do, though, is they complete a challenge. So that's like 25 consecutive, I don't know if it's 20 or 25, maybe 20 consecutive plays that you see from the point of view, and you get 3 seconds to make the call, right? So I went through and took the softball test and got it, so whatever it tells me, I got a 73%, and then as you can imagine, there's like a post-test on the back end. This is not showing up very well on the screen here at all, but it's a module structure. If you guys are familiar with Canvas modules, right? So each chapter in the rule book is a module that is on here. And so then we're essentially walking students through with short video clips and intermixing these point of view videos and teaching points like I showed earlier. That's the kind of the learning environment that you're in, and there's a quiz at the end of each module. So here's an example of one of the softball plays. Those were the challenge plays over there. And then we've built out, there's a flip side on the instructor manual. So on the instructor side, if the instructor wants to show one of the videos and then talk about it for 15 minutes in class, we make it easy for them to access it. So we've got a way for instructors to access the content and then students to go through in order with those modules. These are just more of these plays. We don't have to look at those quizzes. We've got all kinds of assignments that are turnkey assignments for instructors to use that maybe have never, taught the sport, they've never coached it, they've never reffed it. So here's a video about Westfield High School.
RefReps is a great tool. One, because teaching this class and wanting the kids to have more opportunities than the sports that they know. you have to have ref reps. You have to have some sort of platform to help educate them, because I can't learn every sport. I think this class sets them up for more success versus just take the test, get a 75%, okay, now you're ready to go. So I wish I would have had something like this when I was starting off.
I'm excited just to learn more about baseball. I didn't know that there was a lot of technicalities with it, so I'm excited to learn that. I've been a spectator and a player for so long that I can definitely see both sides now. The ref has to make that call either way, he's either safe or out.
I think officials get a lot of criticism, but now, going through this course and doing all the lessons, I feel like I have a lot more empathy towards them and less criticism.
That's what's happening in those first 3 years. That's when you're getting critiqued and criticized and yelled at from the parents and yelled at because you're so new, you make mistakes. These kids are coming in with more confidence, so maybe they won't let that bother them as much. Ref reps is vital in training our new officials. When we originally went to start this class, the idea was we were just going to offer one sport. I actually talked the school out of that because of ref reps and said, listen, we have a platform where we can teach them any sport they want. And my thought was we let the kids pick the sport, not the adults pick the sport.
It is so huge to have refs and officials in sports. That is how we play. So I think it's just crucial that people get out, take this class, because you never know. It might be your thing.
All right, so then that is happening at scale across the country. So, here's a school in Olathe, Kansas, where students completed the course, and then they're out officiating middle school basketball games. High school ADs love this, right? Out in the middle of nowhere in Kansas, yes, there is a officiating shortage, right? So, we've got, people literally completing the class or in the class. They're then able to go out and immediately get experience. That one may be a youth game. I know this one was a middle school game, I think. So a couple of examples of these social media posts that go out and get some pretty good traction of, again, students in the class, they complete it, then they're going out in their local school or in their community and getting the hands-on experience right away. We've been able to get Kyle out talking, our CEO, all over the place with a lot of good media exposure. He was on a segment of the Big Ten, the game in December that was on the Big Ten network. He had a 3-minute spot talking with Dave Revson at halftime of the game. This is another one of these. This slide is all these activations that we have different places. So one of the original ideas back in the fall of 2019 essentially was this model right here. It took 5 years to come back around to it, but that's another thing I've learned about creativity and innovation is ideas that felt like at one point in time it wasn't the right time, they always circle back and can happen again. So the picture on the left is actually at the they did a $5 million renovation at the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. Just opened maybe 3 months ago, but we have a You Make the Call sports officiating exhibit in there as one of the new activations that they have at the Basketball Hall of Fame. We were at the Children's Museum for all of February, March, and April last year with a different type of You Make the Call exhibit. And then on the right, pretty much we can go, that's at the Indiana IHSAA football finals, but we can go to the basketball finals. Essentially, we've got a mobile marketing activation thing, and Kyle's very good about not paying for the partnership, but still getting to activate things different places. That's his gift. So here's our map of all the different schools utilizing it. I think we're at 33,000 plus learners now, if you include the ones from this semester. We're at 780 plus high schools, 70 plus universities. The NCAA is paying, they're paying for, I don't even know, it's 5,000 seat licenses, and so we can give out 50 to universities that want to do it so that students aren't actually paying for the seat license, and the NCAA is funding that. We got a micro-credential approved here for sports officiating. Worked with Mark Ertel, the kinesiology chair, and then they approved it, and then they sent out an email saying we're not doing micro-credentials. So that was unfortunate because this could have very easily been the curriculum in one of the classes that would have got students through that, but that's okay. So you can see we're pretty heavy in Indiana and Ohio. That's where our initial relationships and where a lot of the people work. And then we're, trying to, not a lot west. So we got to get we got to get moving there and get some more dots on the screen. Some things we're creating in the future here. We just got a contract with the NFHS to essentially redo all of their NFHS Learn content. So they got all kinds of content on their platform. So it's concussions, heat stroke, how to coach well, all of these different things. We're going to redo all of the technology experience for users on that front. It was a pretty outdated way to deliver that content. Trying to do things multilingually. I pushed the team on making sure we had everything like closed caption and for audible issues. Now we're also going to do it in multiple languages. And then ultimately, every step of the process here, AI can do things better, faster, more efficient. And the big one that I would really like to get to is how do we take that complex rule book that an 18-year-old is not going to read and is very confusing to read about player A jumps here, player B jumps over here, player C does this. It's like, what is actually happening here? Ideally, there's just a conversation that you can have with it that says, hey, I just saw this. I saw white number 21 jump up here. I saw blue number 13 come over here. And then it's just going to tell you how to interpret the rule with a link to the rule, right? That would be the perfect world to be in instead of trying to go back to the locker room and, in the 200-page book, find rule 14.A.2.3.9, and then cross-reference back to rule 19.3. It's like you don't even know what's going on. You should just be able to ask the bot, right? Like, how do I interpret this? How do I think about it? That's further off, but I mean, clearly with the AI tools out there, that is not going to be an impossible thing to achieve. So some things I've learned in doing this. One is to always try to leverage whatever exists in the system, and this applies across multiple projects I'm working on. Just kind of see things differently than I used to. Is like, what are the assets that are already in place? So in this case, we had the classes, we had teachers, there's curriculums. The states had this need for workforce development, and then ultimately athletic directors and community rec directors, they have a need for games to get officiated where there's a shortage. So if we can immediately take people from the classroom and put them on the court, that would be ideal. Timing matters. Honestly, if all of this would have been developed in 2018, I don't know that the sale would have been as easy to these schools and the curriculum directors trying to do something that's essentially an online platform. But all of a sudden, here we are in 2022, and we've got this online platform, and that makes a lot more sense to schools, right? I mean, the difference between 2019 and 2021 on that front is significant, so that just worked out timing-wise. I think that one, I guess this would be more for the faculty in the room. If you can pivot your classes, projects, research, and students quickly, there's an immense opportunity to have students play a key role in developing the sports tech ecosystem in the market. So what I've learned about working with other sports tech companies is you have to move fast. Even trying to get my students to work on things, continue to work on things for reps. Like in the real world, stuff changes about every week. Like you can't take 8 weeks to do a project and do for tech, like we can for the Pacers, right? That moves a little bit slower, or the Colts or whatever. But if it's a tech company, it's like you need to, like whatever they're thinking about today is not what they're thinking about in 8 weeks. And if you go back and present 8 weeks from now, not saying it's irrelevant, but it's hard. So I've tried to figure that out in classes and projects. And then ultimately for me, it's been the idea that how you view things is how you do things. So just kind of making a decision when I started teaching that capstone class that I believe that students at IU Indy can be creators and can be innovators. I think that's proven that out. In addition, not only this idea, but then also 2 of the last 4 JAG-Start pitch competition winners have been from our program, which probably would not have been the case had we not pivoted this capstone class to be a sports innovation focused class. Here's 4 students from IU Indy or IU PAWI that work on our sales team. They're doing a great job. And I've got people, and that's not true. Braden Reynolds, he's the director of operations. So Braden's story was he had this great internship lined up for the summer of 2020. Well, ain't nobody doing sports and recreation summer of 2020. They're just making stuff up. I'm like, hey, Braden, he was in my capstone class in the spring. And I'm like, look, I got this thing going on with this ref thing. I don't know where it's going. It might be something, it might not, but like, I'm pretty sure you can at least get your hours. for your internship, and now he is the director of business operations and is absolutely the guy that just figures out how do you get stuff done. All right, so there's not, like, you can put a title on it, I guess, the director of business operations, but every startup organization just needs the person that is not a technical expert in anything, but can make themselves be that very quickly and just go get answers to questions. So that, you know, you just think about if that's like kind of a, I don't know, that's like a career path that I didn't see for students to have, but now I see that in other students and have been able to kind of direct them in that direction. Okay, so that is what I have for today.